Good afternoon, and this is WUSB 90.1 FM, and it's 1 minute after the hour, and it is time for Play It Forward. That's right. And the gang is ready for you. Are you guys there?
Yeah, we are, Wiz. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. This is Kurt, and you are listening to Play It Forward on WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 and 107.3 FM. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Alongside me are our wonderful guests, Lauren, Jon, and Sharon. And unfortunately, we don't have Allison with us today, but she's with us in spirit, and a big shout out to her. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. The Play It Forward Project is a nonprofit that raises awareness, educates, and advocates in the fight against the opioid crisis, and focuses on prevention and recovery through peer-to-peer advocacy. On our show, we bring in guests from the field of addiction, people in recovery, and more. We discuss illicit drugs, fentanyl, and substance use disorder. And around 2 p.m., we shout out some accessible resources. We broadcast live from Stony Brook University's radio station every other Friday from 1 to 2 p.m., and we are now live streaming our previous episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under Play It Forward, as well as on our YouTube channel at the Play It Forward Project. You can listen to our previous shows on the go. Please be sure to follow us on Instagram at sbu.playitforward. We'd love to hear from you and send us some questions. Let us know if you would like to have a certain guest on or have a suggestion for us. We'd love to hear from you. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests, and then I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves a bit. So I'm here today with Jon, Sharon, and Lauren. Jon and Sharon lost their son Vinny in August, and Lauren is the founder and director of the Million Mile Project and also was partnered up with Vinny in that journey. So I want to welcome you guys today and super stoked that you're here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I'm Jon. I'm Vincent's stepdad. I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
I miss him.
Yeah.
I miss him.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult. Very, very difficult.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So Vincent's struggle was long, and he did have some sustained recovery. We were hoping for longer recovery, obviously. That's everyone's hope, right? But his legacy lives on, and we're determined to carry it forward and keep it going.
Well, you're doing that today, and we're grateful that you guys are here with us and willing to share that. Lauren?
Hi. So as you said, I'm the founder and executive director of the Million Mile Project. I got to know Vinny, I want to say about 3 years ago. And from the first time I met him, he was, real strong in his recovery. He was sponsoring other guys. He was still in contact with his sponsor as well. One thing that everybody can say that has met him is he had a passion for recovery and for guiding other men and women to recovery, but he really lived that life of recovery too and really put all of the things that he learned into practice. And so with the Million Mile Project, he started as a volunteer, and we can get into that later, but he started as a volunteer and then moved into part-time and then a full-time position, and it really just happened so organically. And it was really, his position was built around his strengths, but also his desire for areas that he wanted to grow in. And it was just such an organic area of expertise for him. And through that, we just worked so closely together, hand in hand. What the Million Mile Project does is we scholarship individuals into long-term treatment programs. And then once they transition out of, whether they're commencing a program or move to their transition housing, we then pick back up and mentor them to get back on their feet post-treatment.
And one key phrase that you said that I want to highlight is long-term treatment, because we all know that is the answer.
Yes. Everybody's recovery journey is different. And if you go to a 30-day program and it works for you and you're a one-trip wonder, like, amazing.
Cool.
Great.
Would love that for people.
Wouldn't everybody love that? But unfortunately, that's not the norm. That is not the usual road to recovery. And so we do work with long-term treatment programs.
That's awesome. Love that. So I want to get into Vinny's story a little bit. And so I'm going to turn to Jon and Sharon for that. And I want to hear tell me about Vinny. Tell me about his life. And
so Vinny started struggling with his drug of choice was heroin, but it started in high school with pills that he would get from various friends, parents, medicine cabinets. And that's where it started. and he quickly moved on to heroin. It happened really quick, really fast. And by 17, we asked him to leave the house.
That must have been really tough.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I was more instrumental in getting him out of the house. I'm an old school guy, and I don't, I know a lot more about recovery now, but I didn't then. And to me, tough love, get out
Right.
of the house, hit bottom, and I wish I was more educated back then. But yeah, I was definitely more instrumental, his mom.
Well, I think that's what we've learned over the years is that education is so key, and family recovery is really important in helping the individual who struggles recover as well.
Well, and we all just operate with whatever tools we have at that time.
Right.
And that's the important thing to remember is...
And speaking to that note, I actually lost my sister to a heroin overdose just about a year or two prior to Vinny's substance use.
Okay.
So really...
A year or two prior to it beginning.
Him
Okay.
beginning.
Okay.
Him
2007.
beginning.
Wow. Okay.
So it really was like I really felt strong that I had to handle it. I had to handle it in a much different way than I witnessed growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And by that it was tough love.
Mm-hmm.
And so listening to the experts at the time.
Yeah.
All the experts were saying that that's
exactly,
what you needed to do,
right. And look at how the landscape has changed since then.
Yeah.
So again, you're kind of being dealt with whatever you got, and
Right.
yeah.
So he struggled, and he did some rehab. He did some 30-day stints. We really tried to find a program for him that would help him finish his education because he was still in high school at the time.
Wow.
And we were just hitting walls. So it did come to the point where we asked him to leave, and he went couch surfing.
Yeah.
And lived.
Yeah. I did that whole thing. I mean, at 17, the
Yeah.
whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So.
And again, that was my parents doing what they thought was best,
Right.
with
Right.
what they had, the tools that they had.
And it's January hits me really hard because it was January. He was living in someone's van in their driveway, and it was 0 degrees, and that was really hard for me. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine how difficult it was for him.
Yeah.
But the family chipped in and picked him up, and we all tried things. My parents took him in. They tried it was a long-term facility in Atlanta.
Okay.
And he did well there, although when him and I would speak about it, reflecting back, he wasn't fond of the program. And I don't know if it was because it just didn't click with him at that time, or it just, it has to be, the timing has to be right. All the planets have to be in alignment.
But I saw an improvement down in
We
Atlanta.
definitely, because he did have recovery in Atlanta. So there was improvement.
It was a good program. Before we could go see Vincent, we would fly down there, and they would have a seminar before you could even see your son or daughter. And so we learned some stuff then. And Vincent was one of those guys. He would eat chicken, nuggets, and fries.
Okay.
That was it. And he ordered a nice fat steak when we were down there. And to me, that's just, that was improvement.
That was maturity.
Right,
Yeah.
I saw something, and he just spoke better, and he was looking good, and I definitely saw a lot of improvement. So it was a positive thing, and at the time, again, not knowing that relapse is part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he relapsed, and
Was that his first? That was the first time that you guys felt okay. He's doing well. He's got this.
Yes.
I hate saying he's got this. 'Cause,
No, but
That
Yeah,
was the
that's-
first time we thought, okay, we're out of the woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, big improvement.
Right. And so, how long in that period of time did he have of sobriety?
I think it was about 9 months.
Okay. It's a nice chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was living in that facility. Though,
Yeah,
the
right,
whole time.
right.
So he, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good. I definitely saw an improvement. And then relapse, and again, relapse is part of the game. And,
So, did he come back up here?
He did.
He did. Oh, okay.
Did he?
Yeah.
Like you said, I have a hard time with the timeline.
yeah. No, I know.
It was a lot.
It all blurs together.
A long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
A lot of years. And
But I guess where I'm going with that is could you pinpoint now, or could he pinpoint maybe at the time what went wrong? Like, what did he go back to old habits, back to old friends? Did he go back to his old routine?
I mean, I'm so blessed that I had opportunities to speak to him about his use and his recovery, and I did ask him that question. trying to pinpoint it for future
Yeah,
reference,
yeah, of course, right.
And he would just speak about how it's a disease of the mind. And when the mind gets that obsession over it, there's no turning back. And he never really vocalized to me what would be a trigger or not a trigger. Just
might
that
not
when,
even known.
Just when that obsession happened.
Yeah, forget it. It's off to the races. Yeah.
He's spoken to me about his time in Atlanta, and if I'm not mistaken, he was pretty young.
He was.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he says, like, it was the first time that he actually, first saw that he could have a enjoyable life in recovery.
Right.
Saw kind of the light.
Yeah.
But in his words, he was still so young that he thought, all right, I've got this, so now I can still dabble.
Okay.
And, when the urge came, it was like, well, I'll just do it this one time.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that being so young, from what he was telling me, is that he didn't take it as serious. Like, to him, it wasn't as serious. Yes, his life and being homeless and all of that is serious, but his drug use was not as serious because, the disease tells you it's not so bad. And you forget, when you're in recovery, you forget how bad it actually is and the grip that it has on you. So from what he's told me, it's like, I was so young. I was naive to the disease.
Well, that speaks to what we were saying before. If you're not educated about it, right? I mean, we were naive to it as well back then. We thought he had it, and he clearly.
I really think age, plays a role in that too. Of just kind of feeling like you're invincible. At least for myself, that was kind of my mindset a bit. We just think it, it'll never happen to me or whatever, and it's not as bad as it seems.
Yeah.
So this went on for a couple of years, though, in and out, or
many.
Many
because
years.
he was how old at that point?
So at that point, I
19?
I was going to say about 19.
Okay, that's so young. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But think about myself at 19, like,
Right, me too.
yeah.
And that's one of the things they taught us is that your brain's not even fully formed at
Yeah,
that point,
yeah.
And like, I don't want to steal your thunder, but somebody recently said to us, it's a disease of the mind. Your mind tells you to breathe. Your mind tells you to eat. So when your mind tells you to use, you got to believe it.
Well, why would you question your mind? It's been
It's a great analogy.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Like, it actually takes effort to argue with your mind.
Yeah. In
that sense.
Well, and it's such a battle. I mean, try telling yourself you're not hungry.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So that was him at 19, and then, I mean, what did the next couple of years look like? I mean, back and forth.
So, and then some time after that, he moved to South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, with his father's family.
Okay.
And his father took him. His father took him in. There was some actually, that was before. That was still in high school, where there was an incident at his father's house. But his grandparents took him in after the rehab in Atlanta.
Did he go to West Hampton?
He did. Yeah, that was early on too. Yeah, the time frame. I should have really.
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
We're gonna and I don't even want to get. I mean, the bottom. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm minimizing it, but the bottom line is that there were struggles.
There were struggles.
It was.
So,
it was.
No, it's not
so
minimized.
let's say. So the struggles in Myrtle Beach led to some criminal activity.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was homeless, and he was using. And Myrtle Beach in the winter has a lot of empty homes.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Right.
Enough said.
Yeah.
So
I know people that did that gig out east, and it's kind of the same thing. Yeah.
Sure.
So that landed him into some trouble.
Okay.
And then there was more trouble. So there was charges on top of charges.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's how it goes, unfortunately.
And he did some time in like a county jail.
Okay.
And they offered him a drug, like I think what we would call drug court
Yeah,
up here.
yeah.
I don't know what they call it down there.
Yep.
And if everything went well, he would have gone through his. I think he needed to maintain 3 years of no charges or no criminal activity, and the felony charges would have been dropped.
Okay.
So we all know the reality of that. That's very difficult. That's very difficult to ask.
And those court things are a great program, but they offer very little support and very little mentorship or whatever you want to call it after the fact. So it's like, okay, you complete this and you stay out of trouble for 3 years, but you're doing it on your own. See you later. You know, it's like, what are we really doing setting these people up for? How are we setting them up? Are we setting them up?
Yeah. Well, that's what, when we heard about Lauren, because there was one night and we stayed up and heartbroken because they were going to push him out on the street of the jail with no money. He was 3 hours from his father's house, and they wanted him to get into some program or whatever. He had no ride. He had no money to sleep anywhere. Nothing. He had the clothes on his back. And how are people supposed to get help?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And I think you're just shining light on a problem that so many people experience. You know, this is just Vinny, not just Vinny, but there's so many other people that are experiencing exactly this.
I mean, if they leave a rehab facility, see ya.
Yep. And then it's like you're leaving after X amount of days, nothing in your recovery toolbox, so to say.
Right.
What are you going to resort back to? Your mind's going to take over. Yep. You're hungry. What are you hungry for? We're right back where we started.
Right.
So at what point did you get into the family recovery group?
So Vinny was looking at some long-term prison time. Well, long-term in my mind. I know that's a relative term, but I think he was looking at 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And I was really at my wit's end and didn't know where to turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time I looked at myself and said, what could I do? What could I do? Because trying to make everybody else around me change isn't working. So how can I change? And that's when I walked into a group called FIST. It's Families in Supportive Treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a wonderful woman, Claudia, who you had on the show.
Mm-hmm. We talk about FIST, we talk about Claudia, we talk about all the whams, the warrior angel moms, quite often.
And I got a Claudia hug.
Yeah.
And she can't get rid of me.
Yeah.
It's now 6 years I've been going to my family support group. And I honestly think that without that background, I would have never been able to make it through what I'm making it through today. So that work I did on myself, on improving who I am and how I show up in life and how I could support my family and how I could support my son in whatever state he's in, physically, mentally.
And that's such a beautiful thing, and it's just as applicable to so many different areas of life, that work on yourself and how by taking care of yourself and how do I make sure that I'm in the best state that I can be really is your best avenue for taking care of those around you.
And I didn't walk into that group thinking that the problem started with me. But 6 years later, I recognize my role in it way more than I did.
Yeah.
Because
which can be tough.
Just like the person struggling, it's everybody else's fault. And as a family member, it's everybody else's fault. So until you could see how you play a role in it, and Claudia has given me this analogy, and she gives it to, I've heard her say it 1,000 times, and she could do it way more eloquently than I can. But if you take a sick plant and remove it from the sick soil and you nurse it back to health, and it becomes this beautiful plant, and you put it back in the sick soil, it's going to get sick again.
Yeah.
So I was looking to make our family healthier so that when Vinny entered back in, we were there, stronger and healthier and better.
Well, I mean, and everybody says it's a family disease, and it really is. And I think that aspect is so often overlooked in so many treatment facilities of not addressing the family unit too, and offering support for them and counseling for them and helping them on their journey in this. It's not just the individual that's suffering, but it's the whole family, and we need to treat this as a family problem as well as the individual.
Yes.
So you've been doing that for the last 6 years. Is it too soon to fast forward to Vinny getting linked up with you, Lauren? Are we missing anything?
No. So I think when Vinny was paroled, he went to the long-term recovery facility in
So
South
he got locked up for a little bit then.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long was he in there for?
9 months.
Okay.
I'm asking.
No, I think it was longer.
Really?
I really think it was longer. I think it was.
And that was down south or
That
up
was
here?
down south.
Okay. All right. So he was in.
He was in.
Yeah.
He was in. I think it was. Yeah. I think it was longer than that, but I couldn't say for certain. But he was getting paroled, and we were able to parole him right into a recovery community in South Carolina.
Okay.
And I believe, Lauren, you could tell me how you entered his life at that point. I think that's when he was in that recovery program.
Yeah, so Vinny was in transition, had been at the program for over 2 years, so he had over or just at 2 years, I want to say, just under 2 years in recovery. And we had a mutual friend or an acquaintance there, and I don't remember how we really got connected, but when we did, and he started learning about this, I think he even said, I hear you're starting a nonprofit, so we started talking about that.
So you know what, then maybe actually where we should start is, I'm sorry to jump around, but maybe we should start with how the Million Mile Project got started, and then we can loop Vinny into it.
Yeah, that's great.
So the Million Mile Project started because for years I've seen a lack of resources and compassion for, this demographic that is greatly misunderstood and underserved. And from a close family members of my own struggling with addiction, I lost one of my childhood friends in 2015 to an overdose, as well as his brother 6 months prior. And then later in life, it's actually coming up in the year, this brother relapsed and took his own life. And we hear of that story too, And so through seeing these individuals struggle so much over the years, one common theme was when they get out of rehab, then what?
Yeah.
They don't have proper credit to live in a conducive environment to their sobriety. They aren't able to get a proper job with a livable wage. They have to, completely rearrange their life. They're going back to family members who are still holding on to resentments about things that they did in their active addiction. So
it's kind of nuts when you think about it. Like, we're going to throw these people into a program for 30 days, all right? And then we're going to expect them to walk out of there on their feet, and they'll be able to get a job. They'll be able to support themselves. They'll be able to deal with their family.
Let's go.
Yeah, and it's like, what are we doing here? They've never been able to do this. Why do we think that 30 days of treating this problem is going to solve it?
Right. So I just saw this time after time of just people I knew personally, and also, family, friends, or
it's hard not to know somebody.
Yeah, it is. Now you know somebody or somebody's loved one. And so I knew that I wanted to do something in this field, but I wasn't quite sure what. And my background is health and fitness. And so after seeing a friend struggle, I flew to Charleston. I picked him up from MUSC, the psych ward, drove him to the same long-term facility that Vinny was at, dropped him off. And seeing that struggle, seeing his struggle, and I went to high school with this guy, so on my plane ride back home is when I said, it's time. And I quit my corporate job, and I got a part-time job working with a program. I was one of their mentors, and I saved money and decided to start the nonprofit. And I went back. I have since then gone back to a full-time job in health and fitness, because the nonprofit, though it's full-time,
right.
it is my passion project, not my paying job. And so through that, I decided there's two main resources that I witnessed that is so challenging, and it's finding long-term care, because there's 30-day, 28-day, 42-day programs left and right.
14-day.
Yes. Those are all insurance. Most of them are insurance-based. And so, they won't keep you. My family friend begged to stay. He said his week, he was getting kicked out the following week. Please don't let them kick me out. I'm just now getting clear-headed. Please, I'm not ready. And he overdosed days later. They tried to keep him in there, and the place said, well, when you leave, if you relapse, you can come right back. What? It makes sense. But as far as the medical insurance was concerned, they would only pay for 30 days. Yeah. Unless, and if you relapse, they'll pay for another 30 days graciously. So
I always feel like everybody that's struggling with substance use, they have there's a dollar sign on them, and that's not the way that it should be.
Or worse.
Yeah.
We've heard stories, of these recovery places, just doing very, very unscrupulous things to the people that they have in their charge.
And then even the insurance-based places or 30-day places, because a lot of locations, states don't have the option for long-term recovery. And so even if 30-day is your only option, what are you going to take out a second mortgage on your home to send your family member or loved one to rehab? Because my family friends did. We didn't. I watched my loved one in a fetal position begging for help in tears, and we couldn't afford to help him. Yeah. And that's crushing. And so access to proper care was one. And then mentorship post-treatment. And to your very point, they finish a program and then what? And so Vinny and I were connected. We went to lunch at McAllister's. And then after that, we were on the phone, and he was just talking about work and life. And he's like, I'm going to be stuck in the kitchen of a restaurant for the rest of my life. And I said, well, if there was anything you could do, what is it that you would want to do? And by this time, MMP, that's what we call it, the Million Mile Project, was starting to get up and going, and we were collecting funding for scholarships and things like that. And he said, well, I love health and fitness. He's really into working out and eating healthy. He would even joke, I care about what I put in my body. And then he'd kind of laugh and he goes, I know that is very ironic. But he did. He never ate fast food unless, a treat or out, with somebody else or something, and always worked out and very active and cared about, how he looked and clean shaven and all that. But he said, I would love to do what you do. I would love to be a personal trainer. And I was like, well, be a personal trainer. He's like, I can't be a personal trainer. I said, why? Well, I'm an addict. And? Well, I'm a felon. And? He goes, well, nobody's going to hire me. And I was like, well, you don't say, hi, my name is Vinny, I'm an addict and a felon. Hi, my name is Vinny, I'm a personal trainer, is more like it. And because Vinny recovered out loud, people grew to really appreciate his testimony.
And what does that mean?
Recovering out loud?
Yeah.
He was not shy about his recovery, his past, how far he'd come, and who he was.
It's awesome.
And
and that's what I'm just gonna take a second, because that's what we need. We need people, and that's why I think it's so great that you all of you are willing to come on the show and share such intimate parts of your life. Is that's what we need to break the stigma, and we need people to not be ashamed of being in recovery or what you went through while you were in your active addiction.
Right.
And I think that's such an admirable thing to do, is to get out there and shout it to the world.
Yeah, and he was a talker. Oh my goodness. He was such a talker. He never met a stranger, and so I would tell him, people are going to love you and learn your story, and that'll come. And I said, yeah, you might not be able to get a job at a big box gym because of your record, but you can work at private gyms. You can have private clients and rent space at a gym. You can write programs. You can do nutrition guidance. And so I painted this picture of possibility to him. And I said, you know what, I'm going to send you 3 of the self-paced, self-taught, do at home certifications. I gave him my personal pros and cons to each program, told him that most of them have some sort of payment plan. I was like, check these out. Here's their website, da-da-da-da-da. And, give it some thought. And so 24 hours later, he called me and he said, hey, I signed up with this certification. I also added nutrition and sports conditioning. I made my first payment, and I have access to it immediately.
How long was he in recovery for at this point?
Around 2 years.
2 years.
Okay, so he had his feet under him a bit then.
But can I speak to how interesting that is? Because if you handle the options that people struggling have for recovery, the way she handled Vinny's options, I think that gives them more power. It gives them...
It empowers them.
It empowers them.
Yeah.
It gives them... So you have choices, as opposed to the tactics that we've done in the past where you have to go here.
Or let me hold your hand and coddle you through this is kind of, these are your options. It's up to you. You got to take those first steps.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Vincent ran with that, too, because he did mentor people. When we were down south at Lauren's event, there were guys coming up to her and I saying how Vincent helped them by mentoring them. So he took that information and that, that style, and helped people out. There was the function where Vincent was speaking. What was that you showed at the?
That was at Owl's Nest.
Commencement, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, recovery out loud. He was very.
I love that. I wrote that down because I think that's such a great slogan because
just seeing him talk and mentoring people, and it was amazing.
I just spoke to somebody who he helped into recovery, and he said to me, Vincent never told me what I needed to do. He told me what my options were.
Cool.
That makes me so excited. That makes me so excited.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, like, to your point, it does empower them. And it's not, if you're told what to do, you're not a, quote, rebel if you don't align with that. But if it's not genuinely your idea, it's different than you coming up with the options, you having autonomy, you paving your own way, rather than someone telling you need to go this route, so you go this route. Well, he called me 24 hours later, told me that. He had signed up, gotten started. And at that point, he had relapsed again. Shortly after that.
Okay.
Shortly after getting the access to the certification.
Okay.
Immediately admitted it to me. I think we were on the phone, and I was like, you sound different. And I had never heard active addiction Vinny, but I knew this wasn't Vinny.
Yeah.
And of course, at first, no, I'm fine. And
it's
one of the given things, he was running late for work, and that was a given.
Oh.
And I'm like...
Because we were just speaking about
this. He was always so punctual. If you're on time, you're late.
Yeah,
Vinny would always call me on his way to work, or I would often speak to him on his way to work, and he'd, I'm at work, I'm about to go in, and it's like quarter till,
Yeah.
So he was running late for work, and that, for me, that was the
something's wrong.
And all I did was ask him one time, and he said, yeah.
And what was it?
It was opioids.
Okay.
It was pills.
How did that happen?
There was a girl, which I had known already. There was a girl at work who... Now, I don't want to pinpoint that this was a trigger.
No.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But I knew...
There's usually a few things that come together in the perfect storm.
I later found out that the first time I ever called him... I'd never called him before. I had texted with him here and there. And he later told me that the first time his phone ever rang and he saw Lauren on it, he was actually picking up this girl from work who asked him to take her somewhere, or picking up her from the girl from work, that he knew from work. He was picking her up to take her somewhere.
Okay.
And he knew, although she didn't say it, he knew it. He shouldn't be doing it.
Okay.
And he was like, I was on my way to pick up pills when you called that very first time, and that phone call prevented me. I immediately texted her and was like, I can't make it.
Wow.
So he was already... Before I even really knew him, it was the allergy was itching him.
Yep.
And so, fast forward a couple of months, and he had actually gotten that from someone at work.
Okay. What was he doing for work at the time?
In the restaurant.
Oh, in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So, he went to a 4-month program.
Okay.
Like, immediately.
Okay.
We got him there immediately. I mean, I would say, like, within maybe a week.
Okay. No kicking or screaming. He's like, I know I need this.
For sure.
Yeah. And did he come clean to you, Jon and Sharon, or did Lauren clue you in? Had you and Lauren connected yet at this point, or?
No, I don't think we did. But, he did call me to tell me that he relapsed and he was going into a new recovery place.
Yeah. So we found, at the time, the Million Mile Project wasn't funding people yet.
Okay.
It was still all in the works.
Okay.
And so we found someone to fund him, an organization, and I actually took him to the laundromat, did all of his laundry, like him. He did all his laundry.
Yeah.
You'll see, I'm not going to do it for him.
Right.
I sat there and made sure it was getting done, right? I remember rolling up his shirts and putting them in his, because when they're sick or when they're like, no, they need to go, but they're scared to go. Yeah. They're scared to go down that same freaking road that they've been down before and they know what to do. And just having that person there with them to do, pack together. So even through that, he, quote, lost 4 months of the 9-month time frame to get certified. He got out, immediately got to work on his certification, and within 9 months, he was a certified personal trainer and back to being sober.
That's awesome.
And he felt so accomplished. Mm-hmm. He felt like, man, I did this. I paid for this. I relapsed and still completed this. This is the first time I've completed something for myself.
I would imagine that was probably the first time in a few years maybe that he would maybe felt like he had really accomplished something.
Absolutely.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
You know, just from what I'm hearing, at least.
Well, he said to me when he completed that and he actually got, that certification come across his screen, he's like, we need this. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, we need this. Like, you were talking about mentorship. Like, we need this, like, now. I mean, guys and girls, but this is him talking.
Yeah.
He's like, guys get out of rehab and what?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to sit and rot in the restaurant for the rest of my life? I knew I was meant for more, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And this is him talking, and if you knew Vinny, he was very passionate whenever he'd talk and emotional, and he's like, we need this. And I was like, okay. And he goes, M&P, like, you helped me see a bigger picture than I could see for myself. You were so focused on my abilities and my opportunities that you didn't care about my past. You didn't know my past. And you were so focused on my opportunities.
Right.
And that helped me to see my opportunities. And he would say, like, my family loves me. My friends love me. They support me. But they also know the crap I've put them through and the doubts in their head because I share those same doubts. You didn't see those doubts. So I didn't focus on those doubts. MMP's got to do this for other people. And I said, okay, well, how do you envision that? And it's because of that conversation that MMP actually launched their mentorship program, and he volunteered, and he was our male mentor, and I was the female mentor.
I'm sure that he's looking down and he's so proud of what's been taking place and that, this is something that is so needed. And I think if you talk to anybody in the recovery community, they'll all agree that this is such a needed thing in all recovery fields,
Yeah. Well, through that, we focused on his budgeting. He was always like pretty good with his money, but as far as paying off debts that he had collected over the years, that was scary to him.
That's scary for anybody.
Yes.
I don't care.
Yes.
I don't care who you are.
So he'd make sure to have money in his bank account, but to call T-Mobile, whoa, And I remember we went through his credit report, and he was supposed to call the cell phone collection company and get it paid off, and it was an $800 bill. And I would then follow up. Did you call no. Okay. And then a couple days later, did you no? I was like, all right. Well, then I was with him. I was sitting at his dining room table, and I said, so what did they say? What did the cell phone company say? I didn't call him. I was like, what are you scared of? And he was like, I don't know that they're going to say no.
I can totally relate to that.
Can you?
I totally can relate to that. Even now, I got 8.5 years. Like I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. And he's like, them saying no?
Yeah.
And I go, well, what will happen if they say no? And he looks around and he's like, I mean, I guess nothing. And I'm like, but what if they say yes? And what if you can clear this up? He's like, oh, that'd be so great. So I picked up the phone and I dialed the number and I just handed it to him.
Yeah.
He's like, what do I say? And I said, you say, my name is Vincent Bruno and I want to clean up this debt. What are my options?
Just need that little nudge.
Right.
That's it.
And he put it on speaker and he did that. And the woman goes, well, can you pay $400 today? We'll just call it a zero balance and it'll be considered paid off. And he was like, oh my gosh. And he's covering the phone and he's like celebrating. He's like, oh my gosh, what do I say? And I'm like, you say yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes.
That's awesome.
And so that's how, after that, he was confident calling other collection agencies and getting on a payment plan. When I first met Vinny, his credit was in the 500s, and when Vinny passed away, his credit was over 720.
That's awesome.
And he was so proud of it.
I'm sure.
Proud of it.
His car had gone kaput. It cost more to fix than it was worth, and he was able to go to a car dealership and buy a car.
That's awesome.
Without a cosigner.
And he was amazed.
Yeah. And he was amazed.
Yeah.
And he would so often say, and he also, he had a roommate, and he relapsed, and they had an agreement. If one of us messes up, like, you've got to go.
Yeah,
like,
good.
And that happened twice.
Okay.
So then he was like, you know what? I'm living by myself. But as you know, someone in early recovery, even if it's 2 years recovery, isolation sets in.
Yeah.
And so even though that was constantly a struggle for him living alone, he was so proud that he was able to
yeah, of course. Right.
Home.
Right.
Yeah. And he had a cat and dog, Macy and Milo, who were his.
Who you're out here visiting, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And Sharon and John.
Yeah.
We know we come second.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I do wanna just chime in that we have 12 minutes left.
Wow.
So I wanna maybe jump to his passing, what that's been like for you guys since then. I know that's probably going to be the hardest part of this conversation, but I think it's an important piece to share how you're carrying his message still. I don't know who wants to kick that one off.
Yeah, that one's rough.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren had to be the bearer of the news to me and John. We were actually on vacation when the call came in, and I just remember, oh, it's Lauren. That's the way I approached the phone. Oh, it's Lauren, all excited, and John knew.
So he wasn't.
Is John with you?
He wasn't he hadn't relapsed, or this he had.
So
did we know?
Struggling.
He was okay.
Struggling. And Lauren could probably speak more to his struggles because he was so open with her. But he was struggling.
A very quick version. It was around if you want to say a trigger, but it was around the anniversary of his best friend that was killed, right in front of him.
Okay.
And he had been waking up with panic attacks, severe panic attacks. I mean, thinking he needed to call an ambulance, panic attacks. And he saw a doctor, and they discussed pharmaceuticals for him, and they suggested, can I say a drug name?
Yeah.
They suggested gabapentin.
Okay.
Because it's, quote, not addictive,
right,
and all of these things. And he had asked me and Sharon both, like, what are your thoughts? And I said, that's not for me I can't co-sign for that, but I can't tell you no either. I think you should talk to your sponsor. I think you should talk to, long story short, he ended up taking it.
Okay.
He ended up filling it, took it correctly the first day, which was a pill in the morning, a pill at night. The next day took 7.
Oh,
the next day was on pills.
Okay. Yeah.
It immediately started the allergy, and he was downhill from there. And for 5 months, he would get 30 days, good. He would get 2 months good. And he moved, because he was so isolated in this town, he moved into a town where his best friend lives. They had strong recovery, but also with strong recovery comes strong drugs.
Yeah.
And I had actually just seen him, and I knew he was struggling, and we did some MMP work, and he was gone 2 days later.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I was with him, he was sober. The next day, I knew he wasn't, and he admitted it to me, and then he was gone the following day.
Wow, it's crazy.
And it was living through what we lived through as a family. It's so weird to say. I never thought it would happen. I lost my sister. There's no way God would take my son too. But he did.
And everyone will tell you too. Yesterday, one of the things that Vinny was working on when he passed away was essentials bags. And what that is this a black drawstring bag with our logo and information to get a hold of us. And it has socks, shampoo, comb, razor, shaving cream, a handwritten card from MMP, all of your basic toiletry essentials for your hygiene. And he said so many people, including himself, showed up to rehab with nothing. And he wants them to show up and know that MMP helped them get there and help them take the first steps of their self-care.
And also lets them know that you guys are there for them after the fact.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so he was already working on that, and I knew that was something very important to him. And so this week, we actually passed out our first essentials bags to the programs that we partner with in his name.
Do you want to shout out those programs, or?
Yeah, so we partner with Any Length Recovery. They're in South Carolina, Oaks Recovery in South Carolina, Beach House in Calabash, North Carolina. Where am I forgetting? Potter House in Florence, South Carolina. And then now there's a new one, Lotus Recovery of South Carolina.
And we can post all of that when we do when we finally finish the show and when we post it online. We'll have all those links with it and stuff, as well as to the Million Mile Project.
Yeah, and just because they're in South Carolina doesn't mean they can't help people.
Oh yeah, Vinny orchestrated a female being picked up in in Texas. She woke up in jail with a missing finger, and he collaborated with different organizations and people and got her transportation, was contacting her caseworker. He was all in the mix to get this woman help because she didn't want a 30-day program because that's all she'd experienced. And so he orchestrated the whole thing. But seeing things like the Essentials bag come to life and honoring him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
it must be so bittersweet, though.
Oh,
I could tell I could see it in your face.
It's tough.
Yeah.
You know, even though that this was something that I founded and had come up with before I met Vinny, he was on the phone with me when I was at the bank getting it started. He was on the phone with me when I got the IRS letter approving us for nonprofit status. He's been alongside me the whole journey, and just through organically helping him launch the mentorship program.
Right.
And then he was actually the boots on the ground while I was doing the admin stuff, the fundraising, the legal stuff.
And you guys sponsored 24 people last year, right?
We did.
Yeah.
12
which is amazing.
The first year, 24 last year. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's awesome.
I love that Vinny's lived experience can help other people.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because his life was so hard, and as somebody that struggles with substance use disorder knows, it's not an easy life. But coming out of it is even more difficult. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, continuing to use is the easier thing. So to have the support that Vinny envisioned.
Well, and it sounds like that even in his struggles after joining up with you, Lauren, and the Million Mile Project, that he's still, the forefront of his mind was still of how can I make this better and how can I help others, even while he might have been struggling, which I think is...
how can I get back to my health so I can be the best version? Because he will tell you, I never dreamt I would have the life I have today.
That's awesome.
Thanks to recovery.
And it's so beautiful that he got that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. I think that's the note that I would like for myself to end on is recovery afforded him a life he never thought possible. A clean credit, a home, a car, animals, a routine, a job that he was passionate about. And, M&P can't save anyone, but we sure as heck can help them be the best and obtain goals in their recovery. And that's what he just shouted from the rooftops, is how beautiful recovery can be. But I will tell you, he will tell you that the second he rested on his morning routine, on his quiet time, on his meetings, on his sponsors' meetups, the second he rested on the things that got him sober to keep him sober is when he would go back out. And he would be the first to tell you that, and he'd be the first to tell anyone, because he wanted people to understand that. The second he got up and hit the ground running without taking a moment, the day would take advantage of him.
Well, in our family group, we talk about in an airplane crash, the oxygen mask comes down and put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to that. Like, you can't help somebody unless you're helping yourself first. And I love that Vinny did reach out to try and continue to help people even when he was struggling. But I think if he would have turned the focus more on himself, and gave himself that oxygen mask, that that might
beautiful.
And M&P was willing to keep him on so long as he did the work. We couldn't put him on the phone with anybody.
Right.
You get healthy, and because we do work with people in recovery.
Yeah.
And
there's going to be slip-ups, and to just cut everybody off is, that's not the name of the game here. Yeah. So, anything else that anybody wants to add in? I mean, this was a heavy quick hour. I feel like
it did go quick.
Yeah.
Do we talk about fentanyl at all? Because we believe that it was fentanyl poisoning that killed him.
Okay.
We're not 100% sure, but we believe that's what did it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like to say to all the dads out there, put your ego aside. Please please, you don't want to go through what we're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see another family doing what we're doing right now.
We do get a lot of moms on, and we don't get a lot of dads on. You know,
I've seen it in a few programs. Right, that one guy, he was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And he took his kid out of the program because he was embarrassed himself.
Yeah.
To have his kid, like you said, the stigma.
Yeah.
You know what? Who cares?
Right. Right.
Cares?
What would you rather have? Would you rather live behind the stigma, or would you rather lose
I want him back.
lose your child? Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
We say all the time, right? It was difficult, man. The hard times were hard. We would die for those hard times right now.
Yeah.
I'd change it in a heartbeat.
Right.
Jump right back on
Right.
that roller coaster.
Yeah.
In a second.
But, and I think recently in the news they talked about the overdose numbers coming down. And that's great, and that's wonderful, and I'm so happy that people were saved.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know that those numbers are very accurate. Are those numbers that because of the wonderful drug of Narcan that saved Vinny countless times until it didn't save him?
Mm-hmm.
It's the recovery has to happen. We have to be more mindful of what people need.
I almost don't like that those numbers are being put out there, because I don't want anybody to think that we can stop doing what we're doing and that we can kind of, the problem's getting better, we can back off a little bit.
It's being celebrated.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm sorry, but no other time that V has overdosed was it recorded.
Yeah.
Because no ambulance was called, or he didn't go to the hospital, or he didn't pass away those times.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So none of those are recorded.
Yes, yes.
And Narcan is amazing, and it's giving people a second chance at life, and
But that doesn't mean we stop talking about this,
no.
and that doesn't mean we stop fighting for accessible health care, accessible treatment, long-term
Right.
treatment.
because Narcan isn't the answer.
Yeah, it's not.
Recovery is the answer.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Yes, that's it.
Cool.
We go to the DEA Family
yes.
Summit.
Frank
on fentanyl.
Tarantino.
Yes,
Yes.
you had
I
Frank.
love
on.
Frank.
Isn't
Frank's
he
a great guy. Great guy. Yep.
He told us that every day in America there is enough people dying to fill up an airplane,
Yes.
a jetliner.
757 or whatever he said.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a couple plane crashes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine one of those crashing and killing everybody aboard
Every day.
every day?
Mm-hmm.
America would be up in arms.
Yeah. I agree.
You know, it's
Unfortunately, though, that's all. Lily, you got anything you want to chime in? Yeah, okay. This was an amazing show, and I'm so grateful that you guys came on. Wonderful guests, and I know that Vinny's not knowing him, but I'm sure he's proud of what you guys are doing, and keep up the good work.
I appreciate you having us on, and
Yeah.
honestly, I'm surprised the three of us can talk because it's not usual that we can even say his name without tears.
You guys
coming
did
out.
great because the bigger picture here is breaking that stigma and sharing his story and keeping his memory alive and sharing his story of recovery, which is so important. So I want to thank you guys for coming on. I want to thank everyone who supports our causes and understands how important it is to look out for each other and to empathize with anyone dealing with addiction. Let's continue to spread awareness about the dangers of illicit fentanyl and promote harm reduction tools like Narcan and fentanyl test strips. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us via Instagram at sbu.playitforward for more recommendations. And for anyone struggling with mental health or substance use, you are not alone. SAMHSA offers services and resources for substance use disorder at 1-800-662-HELP. SAMHSA also has a 24/7 info service at 1-800-487-4889. For additional help, you can visit Hope House Ministries online at hhm.org or call 631-928-2377. LICAD, which is where you guys go for the grief support, which we didn't get to talk about, but maybe we'll have you on again and we can talk about that too, is the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. They offer support and guidance at 631-979-1700, as well as at licad.org. BeyondTheOpioidCrisis.com is a pretty neat website to check out strategies for hope amidst the opioid and fentanyl crisis. LICAD also distributes fentanyl test strips as part of their free Narcan kits, so you can give them a shout for that. And on behalf of Play It Forward, I want to thank everybody for listening. We invite you to join us on Instagram at sbu.playitforward, as well as YouTube at the Play It Forward Project, and we hope to hear from you. So for now and always, keep playing it forward. I didn't cue anybody for that, so that was just me saying that. Allison, I'm sure, is chuckling, and Allison is with us in spirit.
Allison.
It's okay. It's my fault.
Keep playing
it forward. There we go. Great. She got a chuckle out of that. So big shout out to Allison, my partner in crime over here, and we hope you're doing well and looking forward to you coming back on. Our next show is Friday the 14th. We are preempted in 2 weeks. The studio has something going on. So March 14th at 1 p.m., Dave Mannheim from the Dopey Podcast about drugs, recovery, and dumb stuff. Can't say the other word. I want to thank WUSB and WUSB, as well as Lauren, Jon, and Sharon. You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1, 107.3 FM, and our song is going to be Azalea by the Blackberry Smoke. Thank you, everyone. Be well, and please look out for one another.